Hello friends, welcome back to the bench. Thank you very much for joining me. Our patient is an AB87A, that is 2012 Tribeca from the Outback, meaning from Australia. Now, you could ask yourself, why would an Australian customer send the ECM all the way to United States? I was surprised myself. So, let's see what the customer states and go from there. Hi, Black Horse Repair. It's actually repairs, but a lot of people make that mistake. I think Black Horse Repair was already taken when I was starting the shop. So anyways, thank you for your videos. They have given me hope that all is not lost with my 2012 Subaru Tribeca. I was hoping you could help or give me some advice. I got my Tribeca 8 months ago and it have never made it to the road. That's sad. I have had 4 mechanics look at it, but no joy. It looks as if it is the ECM, as I've done everything to the engine, but no luck. I get about 30-minute drive time before I get misfire codes. The last one, it gave me on each cylinder. I have had an auto electrician try to clone the original ECM, but they could not read it. They also tried to initiate the replacement directly into the car. They could read the access key and the immobilizer password, but function failed. Interesting. Unfortunately, here in Australia, there are not many services that I can find, and Subaru Australia have virtually no customer service. I've left 3 messages, but no reply. And when I was looking for a new ECM, they quoted $7,000. $7,000. That's crazy. More than the car is worth. Well, even, even $3,500 is more than the car is worth. Well, maybe 2012, if it's in good condition, it could go for a little more than that. When I could have got one from the USA for about $500. This is some price gouging. Yes, sir. Actually, $500 for this one is overpriced. It shouldn't be more than like 120, 150. So here I am with 2 ECMs and still no working car. Is there an advice help you could offer, as I am not sure what options I have? Regards, Jason. All right. So what happened here? As I already investigated the case and we're getting ready to replace some chips on it. But before we do, obviously first thing I did, since they couldn't clone it, so I figured, okay, let's read the EEPROM directly and see what's up. And to my surprise, or actually I shouldn't have been surprised, but the EEPROM was corrupted. Why was the EEPROM corrupted? This is actually a mistake that I've done myself, and I had to pay big price for it. Actually, thank God it was, I was very lucky in that, because a friend of mine lived close enough to the customer that he literally just drove to the customer to initiate the new ECM, because I broke 2 ECMs, and I had to get one from Ukraine, from all places. Out of all places, only Ukraine had that exact ECM. So when you read the EEPROM, whether you do it through CAN or directly, it doesn't matter. You have few options of which chip to pick. If you don't know which chip it is, don't do anything. Don't even try to read it, because you're gonna break it just by reading it. I know it's surprising, and I was surprised myself. Because okay, I messed up the replacement because I wrote it as a different chip, different size, sure, but reading the chip shouldn't break anything, right? Wrong, it can. So if you don't know which chip it is, don't do anything. So the first mechanic that tried to clone the ECM, that's the mechanic that messed it up. Then the 3 other following mechanics, well, at that point, they couldn't do anything, so it's not their fault. Now, the ECM technically is here just for cloning, right? Not for the corrupted EEPROM recovery. So, technically, I should charge for the EEPROM recovery, but not the customer. The mechanic not messed it up, because obviously the customer didn't mess it up, right? He brought it to the mechanic, and they messed it up. It happens, but when it happened to me, I paid the price, not my customer. Not only I refunded the what I charged for it, but also, had to get the additional ECM, had to pay for the service, and so I don't remember how much I lost, but it's quite a few $100s that I lost on that failed repair. I mean, it happens, that's why we should have liability insurance and stuff like that, but in either case, you just have to pay for your mistake. So now, technically, that mechanic should pay. It's essentially the equivalent of when you mess up your BIOS update, right? If you you're updating BIOS and you terminate the pull the plug, essentially, right? Then you have to recover the BIOS. And how do you recover the BIOS? And how do you recover the EEPROM? You just need a copy, and you just take sensitive data from the corrupted one and put it on the clean image, essentially. In this case, since this is the car that doesn't have it's not push to start, because that would be a problem because your key wouldn't work, and it doesn't have VVT. So there's all you have to do is just transfer the VIN from one image to another image, and that's pretty much how you recover from this. At least in this case, because again, if you have VVT version, and this is actually the same architecture as Subaru Impreza uses. It's the exact same board. It's only the flash that is slightly different. So if this was Impreza, that would have been, especially Impreza with push to start, so 20, maybe 17, 18, 19, 2020, that's a problem. That would be a problem to recover from that. That would be a lot more expensive, not because it's more work for me, it's mainly because I can't do it just by myself. I have to pay to Subaru physically to get that done. So that explains why they couldn't clone it. I already cloned it. We have the replacement over here, the exact same ECM. It's already cloned. Everything should be good there, so that's what we charged for. But I'm kind of curious. So what we're gonna do is, so we're dealing with misfires. So it's either problem with the spark or problem with an injector. Intermittent misfires or misfires after a while, that's probably not compression issue, but the customer said he did everything he could to the engine, so I'm guessing he checked the compression, he checked the ignition and injection, so probably there's no problem there. So it's either a power issue, we just don't have enough power to push to the injectors, or the ignition is weak, could be. It could be a gray out issue, but it usually, we don't have the codes actually, which is too bad, because that would help a lot if I had full DTC report. But even without that, what we can do is this. So we have two chips, SE872 and SE970. Now this one is this is a stock chip, the off-the-shelf chip. It's not a specialized chip. It's an H driver. It controls the throttle position. So when you press the gas pedal, this chip actually opens the air valve to increase the RPM. Right? Now these two chips, you always replace them in pair because this one controls injector 1 and 3, this one controls 2 and 4, this one controls ignition 2 and 4, and this one controls ignition 1 and 3. So if there is any problems, essentially all we can do in this case is just replace those two chips in a hope that that will resolve the problem. It's kind of 50-50. Now, if there is an issue with CAN encoding and stuff, that'll be IC501. This is also true for pretty much all the Imprezas from 2008 to 2017, maybe. But I was thinking, first, if there was a CAN issue, we would have a lot different issues. First of all, the car wouldn't be shifting, right? You would be stuck, if lucky, you would be stuck on the first gear, and the car would drive, but only on the first gear. The reason is that we have a separate on these. We have a separate line for the authentication. So the car would start even when the CAN is completely disconnected, because it will authenticate. The immobilizer will start. The car would start. Maybe it wouldn't crank, but most likely, or maybe it wouldn't start. It would just crank. But good chance that it would start, and you would be able to put it in first gear, but nothing beyond that. And the only reason I had that idea was because they had issues programming it, right? Cloning it. And obviously they tried to do it via CAN. It's kind of, yeah, it's a weird issue, but I know exactly what they messed up. And how do I know? Because I did the very same thing. It happens. As I always say, it happens. Not to me, but it happens. But in this case, yeah, it happened to me. So I don't think there is a CAN issue of any kind. Now, this could still be an MCU issue. That's why we have the replacement, right? So we can do whatever we want with this one because we already have the replacement. So we will know if this was the MCU issue. And how will we know? After we replace those two chips, we're gonna send it back, and we're gonna listen for feedback. What happened? Did it fix the issue or not? Okay, now these chips can be a little tricky because there's a big ground. Let me show you the replacement chip over here, right? It's a pretty solid ground underneath. So you have to heat it up nicely, and then obviously try not making any shorts. These are really close together, but it's really not that difficult, especially if you're using good flux that keeps the solder in one blob and doesn't bead up, and it's not beading, it's wetting. What we're gonna use is Omega 559-55-2. I am working on a new formula that is going to perform a lot better, having a higher acidity, but not super higher acidity. We're going from 3.1 to 2.97. That sounds like not a lot. That sounds like almost nothing. Percentage-wise, it's what, like a couple percent maybe. But the acid that I'm going to use is just slightly more acidic, but it mixes with rosin a lot better than the citric acid that I've been using. In addition, my latest 559-55-2 is not the best for wicking at the moment, especially wicking tiny chips, because the excess of citric acid formed little crystals. So you're gonna notice some scratching. So for at least for now, don't use 55-2 for wicking tiny chips like memory chips or tiny components essentially. I use it for wicking, but for a little larger stuff, like we're gonna use it for wicking over here, obviously, right? That's not a problem. But with super tiny chips, very delicate chips, you will notice that it's doing a little bit of scratching. I mean, it's not going to break anything, but it just doesn't look that great. And it's going to be another week or two before I have the -4 formula, 55-4. So stay tuned for that. There will be a separate listing for that. And unfortunately, that is going to be like 50 cents more expensive because the acid is significantly more expensive than the citric acid. But I'm hoping it's gonna work a lot better. I haven't tested it yet, so we'll see. Alrighty, let's get to it. Alrighty, and we are done. Both chips are replaced. Now I struggled a little bit with the second one because it turns out I put a little bit too much solder on the chip and it didn't sit all the way through. And if the pin is not making good connection, or if it's not touching the board, there's a little bit of gap, it's hard to solder it on because you need to put more solder and you know. But what I did, I just refloated, pushing on it just so it sits, and then that resolved the problem. Now, will this help? Sometimes the chip is indeed something wrong with it, and it helps. But in some cases, it's not the chip replacement that fixes the problem. It's the fact that the board has been heated up to replace the chip, and perhaps some, faulty via, or, some cracked solder somewhere. And the problem goes away not because of the chip, but because of heating. So we'll see in this case. You're getting a replacement, so no worries there. So this is just for to satisfy my curiosity. Test this one first and see if the problem persists. If not, you have yourself a spare ECM. Now, my final thoughts. I seriously expected that in Australia there would be at least some, Subaru specialized technicians, because of the geographical, location, right? They produce those close to Australia, so I expected Australia is a big market for Subarus, but I guess it isn't. Because if it was, then there would be plenty of technicians specialized in Subarus. Since there aren't any, and according to Jason, even the customer service for Subaru Australia is kind of non-responsive, then I expect there's just not much market for these cars in Australia. Weird. Not something I would expect, but sometimes it is like that. Actually, there are some makes that are like popular in Poland, but they're not produced in Poland, but they're very popular in Poland and nowhere else, right? So yeah, it sometimes it works like that. Alrighty, well, let's hope this fixes the issue, and if not, you have yourself a replacement. If after replacing the ECM the problem persists, well, not only you have two working ECMs, but you have a confirmation that it's not an ECM issue, and sometimes it isn't, but sometimes even those I know, because the customer said he did everything on the engine he could, but sometimes those issues can be a little tricky to diagnose. And I had an issue one time where I kept replacing injectors because they were faulting out, and at the end of the day, it turned out that it was the wiring issue, not the injector and not the ECM issue. Wiring issue. Sometimes it happens. Alrighty, thank you guys very much for watching. I do appreciate you, and I shall see you guys in the next one.